All right, all right. I think this is like my running topic. I think I'm going to exploring kind of every angle of this topic. Today I'm going to be talking about books and film again. I know I've talked about it so much that I started a convention called LitCon, Florida LitCon, to connect filmmakers with writers with filmmakers, writers of comic books, writers of board games, writers of novels, with filmmakers in an effort to, get better stories, one, but also in an effort to expand on the stories. And that's kind of the angle that I want to explore today. And it comes in light of a film that is going to be screening at Florida LitCon, and a conversation that I had with somebody after I posted the announcement that the film was going to be screening. And I asked the person, or somewhere in the conversation we went, would you read the book after the movie came out? And immediately, it was an interesting question, because I was like, Hollywood is quick to come out with books right before the movie comes out. I remember Underworld was doing their second one, and the book came out before the movie. They even released a comic book version. Actually, they even had a novelization of the first movie that I don't think came out before the movie. I think it came out after the movie. I'll have to check, right? But I always tell people that, a novelization isn't the exact screenplay. It is a novelization, so it's expanded elements that the film screenplay doesn't convey, that the book may need to convey, which is probably inner feelings, other types of descriptions of the elements, and more expanded elements that are more literary. And I actually should, find out all of the things that go into a book that don't go into a film, or go into a film that don't go into a book. So I got a little Google assignment when I get home. But I always tell them it is not only those elements that vary, but it also, unless the person who wrote the movie is writing the book, you're getting a different person's interpretation of it. And they were like, if I already watched the movie, I'm not going to read the book. So I said, well, what do you think about old properties like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Frankenstein, even The Wizard of Oz? I remember when I saw that Wizard of Oz came from a book, I picked it up and I started reading it. I think it was in a used bookstore or in a library somewhere, and it was very interesting. This is a story that I'm familiar with. I've been watching, Wizard of Oz since I was a child, and then I found out Wizard of Oz was like the 8th version of the movie, of the story that was made, and they did like 6 or 7 different versions, politically exploitative, you name it, and it was interesting. So I said, all right, take something like Boys in the Hood. It's a story that a lot of people know, but would you read the Boys in the Hood book? And they said, you know what? I hadn't thought about that. I might read the Boys in the Hood book. Oh, the reason why I say that is, okay, the story is good, but now what if it's Stephen King's version of the Boys in the Hood? Or now that you may know Jeff Carroll, and I have a certain writing style, and I bring certain elements to it, what about the Jeff Carroll novelization of Boys in the Hood? Or, just give you something, say, see, there's a lot of writers out there, so I'm going to talk literary, but say that you read the Octavia Butler version, or the Walter Mosley version of Boys in the Hood. Or let's go urban fiction, Treasure Blue. If he was to write a version of Boys in the Hood, you understand? I know if I write Harriet Tubman's story, it's going to be different than all the other Harriet Tubman stories out there. I'm going Braveheart version. You understand? So you may know the story, but you're not going to know how I'm going to tell it. And if I do Boys in the Hood, it's probably going to be some vampires or some werewolves, and I have the freedom to do that. Even though it's still Boys in the Hood is a different. The elements may be different. Take Quentin Tarantino. The way he does a story is not going to be the same. Quentin Tarantino did Frankenstein. Everybody would be like, yo, I'm going to see Quentin Tarantino's Frankenstein. You could watch a Frankenstein marathon and still be like, yo, I'm going to see Quentin Tarantino's Frankenstein, or James Cameron. You understand? Just because these storytellers, these filmmakers bring a certain element to it. So for people that read writers, Nora Roberts' Frankenstein, that stuff is going to be all loved out, all scandalous up. She's going to bring her elements to it, My girl, Daima Poole, she writes chick lit. If she was to do a Romeo and Juliet, what? Come on. Maybe Little Romeo and Julieta or something, she might put some real hip-hop urban names to it and jazz it up. So I just think about that. And I say that I do this, blog because I want to expand what people think about the relationships between print stories, and that's comic books, role-playing games. My son just told me today that he started playing Warhammer, and I remember years ago when he was in the 6th or 7th grade, I tried to get his friends to play Dungeons and Dragons. I always tried to get into the role-playing games. So I'm still trying to get into them myself to find one that may work. But once he gets in one, maybe it'll allow us to, try other things, as a family or whatever, because I have a vivid imagination, and those games are really for the imagination. But he's real technical. But going back to, what this blog is about, I really want to expand people's understanding of stories in multiple mediums. They don't compete with each other, they actually complement each other. It was just last week that Star Wars announced that they're going to start pulling officially, because unofficially they've already been pulling, but they're going to officially be pulling from the expanded universe novelizations. And they had prior considered those legacy stories, and that just means that they're fan fiction. Now they've said that they're potential canon, meaning everything didn't happen you read in the books in Star Wars, but you never know what may become official. So that's cool. I still don't think it would hurt if they said it's all canon. Now there's a whole lot of inconsistencies, but shoot, this weekend I'm going to see Endgame, and that's taken from Infinity Wars in the comic book, and they've already, taken their liberties based on how many characters they can put in a movie, how many characters the studios own. In the comic books, the X-Men and Avengers are all fighting together to fight Thanos, and Fantastic Four. But in this particular story, it's only the Avengers. There's no Fantastic Four. There's no, you don't see the Thing and the Hulk, joining forces, or Luke Cage. There's no Avengers. There's no Fantastic Four. There's no X-Men, and then there's no Defenders. So no Daredevil, Luke Cage, Misty Knight, and all those Netflix people. Okay, and all of them. Luke Cage plays a strong role because I guess they needed another black person in the story. But in these stories, he plays a big role. Maybe they'll do World War Hulk. Maybe they'll do Doctor Doom once they get these Fantastic Four properties merged with the X-Men and the Avengers. Those all sound cool. But just saying that even Marvel, which has books and books of stories, and they've all considered them canon, right, as far as I know, or they're all potential canon, they don't have a problem. with people knowing the potential story or potentially knowing the story, whichever version you like, knowing the potential story or potentially knowing the story, right? They both are true. It doesn't stop Marvel. It doesn't stop DC, because what happens is they flip the script, whether it's on the television, whether it's on the movie. So it doesn't matter. I think that black film world, black entertainment world, whether it's being books, writing the movies into books, or movies finding stories in the books, I think it will work both ways. I really don't think it should be limited. It takes the right combination. A literary translation of the movie, yeah, maybe that might not work because everybody's going to know it. But you take something like The Wire and put it 1,000 years in the future in a cyberpunk world, it would be interesting to see how they rearrange things. You know what I'm saying? Some stories could be made into anime or children cartoons and poked fun around. How many times have they told the Star Wars story, in children's form? So, Lord of the Rings, they had cartoons that retell the daggone same story, and children's books do the, same thing. They even take out the love scenes just to make it happen, or they take out the killing scenes just to make it children's version. So I think there's a lot out there that can be discussed. I don't think anything off the table should be off the table. I also think that I'm talking this on a stupid blog in my car, right? But to be honest, I've been an agent, and I've been an agent for 15 years. I represented Monique, Bill Bellamy, JB Smoove, some top people, and and clients like Rudy Rush on the radio in Texas. I've been in brainstorming meetings with their management and other agents, and they would talk about radio, they would talk about books, they would talk about movie roles, and you got all these people sitting there talking. So imagine about a particular a client, right? Imagine if your client is a writer. Imagine if your client is a filmmaker. Then you're going to put all of these things on the table. So that's kind of why people get distributors, because they've already talked about this, and they talk about this on a regular with their clients. That's why people get literary agents, because they talk about this all the time with their clients and with other people, and they have connections, because they're going to try to do for you what was done for Stephen King. Now, as an independent person, it's very hard to think of everything, and sometimes even if you think of everything, you can't do beyond your reach as well as you can do within your reach. And it's very easy to work within your reach, the people that I met this guy that does a game thing. We had good dinner. I'm going to write a story for his game. Yeah, that's easy to make because you done made the contact. But trying to reach out to people that you don't know to write a game story for them is ridiculously hard. So as an agent, a literary agent, you already have those connections. You say to the game company, we had this last writer that worked out well for you. I got a new writer. She's just, whatever. They're just emerging, right? And they are really good. I think they're really good for a match for this story. Whatever gobbledygook they got to tell the company, they say, I think this will work for you. Next thing you know, they make it happen. So as a independent person, you got to think of all of this stuff. So I remember I used to tell my comedians, there's so many opportunities for being a comedian. Now that, the Eddie Murphy path from stand-up to film to retirement is not working out for everybody the way, we thought it would be. They are now thinking, some of them are writers, and they've been writing for 10, 15 years. Some of them became directors, some of them became a whole bunch of things, and I'm still telling them, I was on the internet telling one of my old clients, get into video game commentating. Commentators is boring. Look at Jeff Rogan. He got into MMA very early, and they still like him as a commentator. Then he got into Fear Factor and all that stuff, just hosting and just, being, expanding his reach and his thoughts that he was putting out there in his stand-up. Think about what your brand is and expand on it. So anyway, that's it. I'm at 15 minutes. Books, films, books, it's all good. Peace.